Alright, so I reviewed Matrix. I'm going to try to review all three of the trilogies. I'm not really going to cover the Animatrix. I don't own that movie. Not for any particular reason. I'll get it eventually, but I don't own it. I haven't seen it. And I want to just cover the mainline Matrix movies so you understand my thoughts on the fourth one. Me covering the Animatrix, yeah, it'd be cool if I covered it so I have that review out before the new Matrix comes out, because it's technically a Matrix film. But it doesn't really matter, right? Because I don't think it's going to feed into any context that I need to understand the new Matrix movie, right? You do need to see all three Matrix movies to understand the fourth one. So I did review the first Matrix. You can hear my thoughts on the first Matrix in that video. And now let's talk about the third one, Reloaded, which, let's start with the title. The title is the biggest issue with this movie. The title of this movie is Reloaded. Now, that is a fine title by itself, but the sequel is called Revolutions, and the fourth one is called Revelations. They all have R's in the title, and so I don't know which is which anymore. It's I get that Reloaded's a good title for this movie. Okay, sure. Revolutions. I just the titles with the R's are very irritating, especially since it's not like I can go, oh, the one that came out at this date, because very few people seem to actually remember this. Matrix, Reloaded, and Revolutions came out the same exact year. And this movie actually ends on a cliffhanger for that movie. And I think that's the biggest issue with this movie. It feels like this movie was a rush job because they were filming two Matrix movies at the same time, and there's some parts that really feel like if they maybe weren't making two movies at the same time, they would have fleshed out this movie and made it better. And same thing with the third one. I think that this movie is not terrible. First of all, I love the world of Zion and how they show all that. My biggest issue with this movie is it was impossible to make a sequel to The Matrix. Not in the sense that it was like actually impossible. Like they could have made a good sequel to The Matrix, but in the sense that the first Matrix is this movie where Neo discovers this world, and that's your hook. Now we're discovering more of this world, which is cool. I like seeing that stuff. I like seeing the world of Zion, things like that, But now Neo's arc is kind of awkward in this movie because what is Neo exactly doing in this movie? I don't really know because he's just kind of there. It feels like Keanu Reeves really, again, it's kind of interesting. Keanu Reeves has been like this big star because even in the first Matrix, he wasn't that interesting of a character. Because as I said in my review, he should have been asking more questions about how this all actually relates to, like, what is the Matrix? What is this? What is that? He kind of asks questions, he kind of doesn't. And that's what makes him such a boring character in the first movie. But at least he serves a purpose to get you invested in the story, and that works. In the second one, he really isn't a character at all. It feels like his arc is kind of wrapped up and it's just awkward. It's weird. So, I don't know. I don't really like that. I really like some of the action scenes in this movie, the in-camera ones. Here's the thing. I praised the effects in the first Matrix, said they really hold up and they look good still for the most part. There's a couple dated ones. But this one, all the CG stuff looks like absolute shit. And that's because they kept overusing it and it wasn't like as blended as it was in the first movie, and that's because they want to show more of the world. I get it, but at times it's very distracting. And there's some really great in-camera action scenes, but when they're not in camera and they're CG, looks like absolute garbage. It just looks terrible, and it's irritating. And then the other thing I want to say about this movie is just that the religious philosophy. In the first movie, it's very simple. You have a character who he wants to know the truth. He's presented with two choices. He has to pick one of those two choices, and he has to realize the truth of his world that he knows. And now there's a prophecy of the chosen one, very like obviously referential to Jesus Christ being the chosen one, and like, you know, there's different things like that, right? Very obvious religious philosophy in the first Matrix movie. This movie kind of combines elements of all kinds of religions, Buddhism, right? And there are some people who look at that religious philosophy in this movie and they say, it's brilliant, it's great. I think those people are reading too deep into the movie and like deciphering things that aren't there. Because the actual religious philosophy in this movie that is there is very convoluted, very excessive, not nearly as bad as it is in the third movie. The third movie actually has so much religious philosophy that it actually breaks the universe of the Matrix by explaining its religious philosophy. Like, very heavy-handed in the third movie. But this movie isn't nearly as bad as that, and that's fine, but it's still not very good. I'm not a huge fan of The Matrix Reloaded or any of the Matrix sequels. I like the first one. I think it's a good movie. It's a pretty good movie. It's not a great movie, I don't think. Like I've said, I'm not a huge fan like everyone else is. But this movie is just awful. Just awful. I just don't care for Matrix Reloaded. I just don't. I know there's like Matrix sequels defenders, in the same way there are Star Wars prequels defenders, but and I don't think I've also heard that there are people like think that this is like as bad as the Star Wars prequels. I would say, in a certain sense, yes, but in a certain sense, no, because the Star Wars prequels are like so incredibly poorly done that there was like it was like confusing to see what they were going for. In these movies, I can see what they're going through. Less so the third one, but I can kind of see what they're going for. Don't really like this movie, but I understand the approach. That's all I'm gonna say.